Sunday! From the race plate 72 US 30 dragster, the Coca-Cola bottle from Chicagoland presents the Mr. Chevrolet USA Super Dual Bike Car Showdown. From Pennsylvania, it's three-time national champion Jungle Jim Lieberman. From Dallas, Texas, Market and Watson's Drag-On Vega. From Alabama, the bold one, Bobby Wood. From New Jersey, Bruce Weston's Fantastic USA 150.
Well, here we are on another fantastic Wednesday night. Professor P is going to be a few minutes late, so I decided to kick this thing off on time so everybody wasn't hanging around wondering what was going on. Where's everybody at? What are we doing? But, yeah, so Professor P will be here in just a few minutes. He's just running a little bit behind. Not a big deal. We still got a lot of introductions to do. Kind of let you know what I've been doing all week, which is probably... not up to everybody's standard. I don't know. All right, so we got Uncle Squirrels in here saying he's going to miss this one. Well, you can catch it on the replay, buddy. Also, I addressed something from last week. I took I pretty much turned all the commercials off, so hopefully we don't have the snafu that we had last week. I just went in there and clicked everything that was a commercial on it, right? So I don't know what was causing that, so I just decided to check them all. Let's see. Mostly Old Parts. Patrick is here. Danny Boyd is here. A Cove is here. Fab Race Mod Repeat from Northeast Dragway. Chris Cox, otherwise known as Speed Oasis LLC, is in the house. Mr. Buff Del Campo is greeting us from the Arctic north of Clarksville, Tennessee area. So, and it's only like maybe an hour from here. So, I doubt it's cold. All right. Let's see. Mr. John. Well, I don't know if I should call him Mr. John or the man John Wilburn is here. Big Belly Racing, Mostly Old Parts, Patrick. Let's see. Everybody's greeting each other. Dust Devil Garage, Brian is here. UD Motorsports Garage, Andy. Let's see. And 51 Flatty's in the house. So... yeah, see, Buff is saying it's 52 degrees there. It's not quite Arctic weather. It's probably the same thing here. It's probably exactly the same thing here. I am digging this time change, though, because, like, I literally can see... I can see at night when we do these lives now. It's not super cold. Professor P is in the house.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. Let's just put it that way.
It's all right. It's no big deal. You get your big boy pants on now, and we're going to make some magic happen.
You know what? I missed the intro, though, man. That kind of sets up the whole, like, avenue of, like, being awesome, you know? So, yes!
Oh.
Sunday! From the race plate 72 US 30...
One more time.
New Jersey, Bruce Weston's Fantastic USA 150.
Here we go.
I know this is the part you wanted to see, right?
Yes. Super awesome. All right, now it's time for Tech Talk Live. Go for it.
Now it's really Wednesday night it's officially Wednesday
it's
night.
It's officially Wednesday night, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, Professor P's in the house. He's bringing all of his technical know-how and knowledge. And then, like I said, I was going to bring everybody up to. I was going to bring everybody up to speed of what I've been doing. I've been just trying to catch up on a lot of things. I had a lot of stuff on my plate. This is like the worst time of year for me to do anything. If you haven't noticed on Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood, I haven't done a single video in like a month.
Neither have I. Haven't done anything.
And I've been kind of focusing, like Shane had said last week, focusing on myself, trying to get the right side up, keeping the greasy side down. So, but I have all the AHRA stuff to do this year, schedules, which the schedule will be out before the end of the week, and hopefully the rulebook will be out before the end of the week.
Nice.
And that's my last couple of things to do. I had to deal with the accident I got in the white Ford truck last year at the end of the following weekend from No Name Nationals. I got in an accident in the white Ford truck, so I've had to deal with that all week. And that's about it. I'm actually working on a project A select few know what's going on. Okay. I'm going to have a live here coming up soon. Not one of these little baby lives. This one's going to be a live, virtually a 24-hour thrash session. Okay, and I'll let you know just because we're the in crowd here. I'm going to be doing the thing I'm going to call the Electra 22.5. I'm going to literally drive an Electra into my driveway, and 22 and a half hours later, I'm going to be driving it out with an all-new motor. This thing's got a rod knocking already, and we're going to pretty much bring it in here, pull the motor, drop a whole new one in, and send her out the door in 22 and a half hours. So that's what I've been planning, I've been working on trying to get the engine done. All right, let's go back and catch some of these, make sure that we didn't have any awesome questions at the beginning. I think everybody was just greeting each other.
I'll talk about a little bit while you're looking for that. I actually moved the Blue Dart from one garage into the other. It's on jack stands, and I made a to-do list. I actually made a list of things that I have to do, and that's coming along. So yeah, it's a thing. So we're moving along.
Speaking of that, this weekend was the first test, the litmus test of the 28 10.5 NA class at this past weekend out at Northeast Dragway. It did not fare well. Matter of fact, to the tune of none. Right, I was a little disappointed. I guess there's just and you and I have said this. It's like there doesn't seem to be any of those cars out here at all. California, there was like, I don't know how many was running at Verona, probably 12. But here, just none.
Really?
I'm yet to really see one. Greg Wenz was a AHRA member. He had one. He had I think his was a 68 Camaro, but it had big block Chevrolet in it and a Lenco. And it ran on a 9x30 slick. But Irish Outlaw Garage, evening, new to the Buick 340. Dallas, what the hell is the thin metal spacer between my Carter 4-barrel and the intake manifold? All right, so the 340 engine was only available for 2 years, really, 66, 67, and it was the, if you're looking at stages of evolution, I don't know. What is it? The Galapagos Islands proved that evolution was a thing. Well, the Buick small block evolution started with the 215, then the 300, then the 340, and then the 350 Buick. The Buick V6 fell in there around the 215 300 stage, and it ran all the way through pretty much the demise of when the regular V6 Buick went away after the Grand National was done, pretty much. But and it did pop up actually in '89 in the Turbo Trans Am. But the 340 Buick was the one that connected the dots between the 300 and the 350 Buick. And it is like I said, odd 2 year only. It shares more parts with the Buick 350, but it uses the same cylinder heads as a 300. And they're known to have really like a massive torque punch right off of idle. The 300 is that way. The 300 is snappy. But with the added stroke from 3.4 to 3.85 inch, it just has an absolute punch right in the face when this thing is like, when you're just right off of idle. Now that thin metal spacer, I'm not going to hold it up any longer. That thin metal spacer is actually just a heat shield for the carburetor. General Motors was known to do that. A lot of performance Chevrolets came with a heat shield, like your Z28 302 Chevrolet came with a heat shield underneath that Holley carburetor that was on there. And they're generally just a thin metal shield that sits directly below the carburetor, and it'll just have a gasket on either side of it. It used to be, if you were a street racer, that's where you'd hide your solenoids, is underneath that thing, right? You'd buy a 1-inch spacer, put it under that, and then put your solenoids under there, and it would look like a stock heat shield, and nobody'd be the wiser. So, but yeah, I mean, you can take it off and ditch it, but it is probably worth about a good 5 to 10 horsepower. It does keep heat off that carburetor. And Brian Brinker says you're the tech god.
Oh, what? No, I just make it up really good.
Yeah. Danny Boyd's want to know, how does he make his car sound like that? Nitromethane, my friend.
And a lot of money.
All right. Jonathan Couchy says, if my exhaust valves are touching the pistons, is my cam too advanced or retarded? So if they're touching them on the exhaust stroke.
If it's touching, if it's already touching, advancing the cam or retarding the cam is not going to give you any clearance, really. You're going to have to either widen the LSA, but you can advance and retard the cam. And basically, advancing the cam is going to increase the piston valve clearance. But if you're, how can I put this right here? So you can, it's only going to be doing it by very little. You're going to gain probably 10 thousandths on it if you're going to move it any direction. So I don't like to rely on that for our piston valve clearance, because then you get slack in the chain, and guess what's going to happen? It's going to hit. And
notch those pistons.
Yeah, just notch the pistons. You know what I mean?
You can do it with the pistons in the block.
Yeah.
But you do have to have a separate head, and you can get the valve cutting tools from a place in Chicago. I actually Googled it, but there's a place online that they make it for everyone.
Yeah.
And
if you retard the cam, it's going to give it more clearance on the exhaust. If you advance the cam, if you retard the cam, if you advance the cam exhaust, if you retard the cam, it's going to do the intake. But you're only going to gain just little amounts. You're not going to be gaining a whole bunch. Literally 8 thousandths to 10 thousandths is what I normally see, because then you would have to move it a whole ton.
Dude,
but usually,
you need over 100 thousandths clearance on the exhaust side.
Yes. I tell people, if you're a hydraulic, you want 110 a clearance. If it's a solid, you can get away with about 90 usually.
Yeah, you're going to want piston to valve clearance is something that, like, if you're throwing a big cam at something, always check your piston to valve clearance, because what you'll find out is if you don't, that's the one time that you're going to bend 16 valves. Right?
And here's the way to do it too. Don't do it with clay. I mean, a clay is a quick check. It's kind of like using a set of calipers. What I always do is degree the camshaft and then do the valve drop method. So before TDC, like say 10 or 11 degrees, that's going to be your tightest point, because the piston is literally stopped moving up, but all the valve train is still moving, because the rod has to swing from one side to the other.
Right, it's getting to its dwell point.
Exactly. So what I tend to do is I'll go, I always do a valve drop map. So I will do, say, 8 degrees before 10. So I'll do, like, say, 18 degrees. And then I'll check it there. Then I'll do it at 16. I'll do it at 14, 12, 10, and then do it as it goes away. And you'll notice that sometimes it'll sit there and dwell. Like, I've had a few that 14, 12, 10, and 8 were literally all the exact same numbers. And do the exact same on the intake when it goes away. If you're really going to have a valve crash into anything, it's really going to be on the exhaust valve, because the piston chases the exhaust valve closed. So if you're going to have any type of valve train that's out of control, that's when you're going to have a problem. Typically, the intake valve is basically chasing the exhaust valve down. You're going to have a real problem for the intake to hit. But 90% of the time, if you're going to over rev an engine, it's going to be on the exhaust valve that I've ever seen really any type of problems happen.
All right. Well, and Andy's saying that NA classes are a thing of the past, unfortunately. I think you're right on that. I think what the people are wanting is loose rules. And
fast. I want fast for cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what's sad about it is, damn, NA racing is so much cheaper than
and
it's turbocharged, blow it up,
Yeah, because it's about the tune and how it's set up, and you can, like, when we were racing, me and Dallas, we were literally looking at each other. That's how close it was. We were looking at each other, going
barely moving.
Yeah,
right?
like this. You know what I mean? It was that close. There was another guy that I used to race, Greg Curtis.
See, Greg's car ran really good.
Yeah, he never beat me though, man. It was all on the tree, because his car was faster than mine. But we would be looking at each other, and he had that big block Camaro. It was like a 555 big block, Camaro.
Yeah.
And man, I was out and gone on him, and he would I could hear that car over mine just hunting me down. But man,
Well,
when I say
and you
hunting
know
me
what
down,
was sad about that whole thing is like Greg Curtis's Camaro. That thing was kind of slow for what it was, right? God, that thing was consistent, and he was just a murderer on the tree. I ran him
Yeah.
one time, and it was like it was literally like my father died, and then the match race madness happened that weekend,
that
right?
sucks.
And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll run Greg, and I didn't really want to. I had actually bowed out, and I told him, hey, you know what? I'll be there, man. I'll be there. And my head was just not in the game. I did everything wrong. I left the switch on the battery all night. So I went out there the next morning to start the car up, and of course you go nothing, right? And see, my car is EFI, so it's got like, it's literally has enough electricity in there that you could probably power the Hoover Dam for a couple of hours. And it wasn't like you could just throw a battery charger on it in 10 minutes. You're gonna fire it up and go, right? It took a long time to bring those, and they were two Optima yellow top deep cycles. So you had to charge them forever just so it would get up above that 12 volts, and then it would stay there for a long time. But it just took forever to get there. But yeah, you're right. I think the NA classes are kind of a thing of the past. I think what we need to do is kind of get together as a group, because Shane and I had talked about it before, and just run a 10.5 NA circuit.
I'm down for that, man. That'd be bitching.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of cool. Just do like 3, 4, 5 events a year or something, and then just whoever can make it, and it'd just be kind of cool to watch that.
I actually got something, since we're on to this subject. My camshaft that's in my engine, because I've actually put my small block onto a stand. That means that cylinder heads are going to be going on soon. But the camshaft I call it a 3/4 race cam. It literally says that on the back. It's my little fun thing. It's 272, 284 on a 108 LSA for this engine. Now, it's definitely not designed for nitrous, but here's what my question is. Should I take that camshaft out and put a wider LSA, something like on a 112 or maybe in a 114? That way I can get some use out of it. Or, because, if I spray it with, like, say, a 250 kit, you're really not going to get all the power out of it because there's a lot of overlap. So you're going to blow a lot of that right out the exhaust. Or do I just leave the cam in it? And since I'm only going to spray it for technically one race, do I just leave it alone? What's your thoughts on that?
I think I'd probably split the difference. I wouldn't even split the difference. I would be smart about this. Mm-hmm. It's an NA combination. The converter's not right. The gear's not right. None of that stuff is right.
Nope.
I'd leave it NA. I wouldn't even gap the rings. I'd hit it with a 150 shot. And then I'd never worry about it again. Right?
Because I want to win the class.
Well,
I need a 550.
Say you won't?
Well, I need a 550. My goal is that, I shouldn't use the word 550. I want to be at least a 570, 560 consistently, right? And math basically tells you that if my cars run, say, a 610 or 6.0, right, in that range, I need 250 shot to get into that range. That's what I need.
Man, I think the whole combo is wrong, right?
I do work for a company that I can make converters for,
Yeah, but then it's a nitrous car after that, right? Because then if you wanted to run an NA, it's going to be a dog.
Oh yeah, no, this is going to be a thing. Has to be a decision has to be made because there's a lot of things that have to be changed. Like I would pull out my 904 just for this one race.
You know what I would do?
I'd put a glide in it.
Here's what I would do. I wouldn't even mess with the nitrous. And I know you're wanting to go after that 28.10.5 class. Mm-hmm. I'd show up there and run that 28.10.5, but I'd call Andy Wood out for a match race with Casper. Because his truck probably runs, I bet it probably is going to run anywhere from 640 to 620, somewhere around there once he gets it sorted out. And that thing's making 700 horse.
Yeah, but that'd be a good race then, because I don't think, I ran, the best I ever ran was at Bakersfield with it, and I went a 609 in the 8th mile for that. But most of the time it was in the 6-teens and the 620s. Barona was in the high like 630.
That's how mine was at Barona. It was always like I'd go down to Fontana and run a 620.
Yep.
in the 8th mile and like a 970 or 950. It would run a 950 in the quarter. And then I go up to Bruno. It was always like 638, 642, somewhere around there. It never really went faster. And I think it was because it just couldn't get any air.
Yep, I was a full tenth and a half slower up on top of the hill than I was down the hill. And plus, you're driving. Verona went into the wind. You're going into the sun.
Well, I'm good with that because that if you didn't make that stop, dude, you were going down into Poway.
Yeah, right. There was a cliff. Did you ever walk out and look at that cliff?
I did. There is literally like a cliff. You better hope you don't have a brake failure.
Yeah.
So Danny Boyd says, what's the difference between a 340 and 350 Buick? It's a 50 thousandths difference on the bore. The stroke is the same, but the heads are different. They use this 300 style head versus the 350 Buick head. And that's why I was wanting to do the 350 Buick head on the 300 block because I think there's a lot to be gained there. All right, Irish Outlaw Garage. So I have a 67 GS340 and I have a 67 GS400 body tub with trunk lid for sale. Oh, well, depending upon how thrashed that 67 is, I mean, I wouldn't mind having something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on the 340, but if you got just the body and tub, if it's something that can be salvaged for a race car, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I guess I'm probably the last guy that needs to be chasing any more cars at the moment.
Right. Me too. I still got 2 more to come here.
Let's see. Dust Devil Garage. Next year we should try to plan for like next year during the off racing season.
Yeah.
We do like a family vacay. I'll haul my travel trailer out there and we'll start because I'll set it up to where we stay at Admiral Baker Field, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Which is right down about where I was living before when I lived there in San Diego, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, unless you have some friends and family to stay with.
Oh, I got all kinds of friends and family, man.
Oh, all right. Well,
yeah.
okay.
I grew up there my whole life, yeah.
Well, Dust Devil Garage says, if you notch the pistons for valve clearance while on the block, do you worry about balance?
Yes.
I was going to say no.
I do. Because this is part of the mock-up things. I understand where he's going with this is because if you put a cam in it, you don't want to take it apart. But this is why I always do mock-up and I always check, all 4 corners for piston and valve clearance. So that way I only balance on final assembly. So this is my very last thing. You can, as long as you take off the same amount on each side.
That's what I was just going to say. That's how I did it.
You can do that, but then your bob weight's slightly different. So then it's going to be, what is it? That would be underbalanced, I believe, I think is what it is. And you can underbalance and overbalance depending on what kind of RPM range you're going for. And that's something that we do because remember these things are in a V, so it's not really a perfect balance. Anyways, you're kind of balancing for an RPM range. Let's put it that way. I would worry about it. I would lose sleep over it. That's basically how I am, though. That's just my stupid mentality. But you can do this. I've done it before for other people, and they didn't seem to worry about it.
I ran into it with the Jack the Giant Killer 300 that I was going to talk about here in a few minutes. That was the first engine I had to notch. Buicks generally don't have to notch them because they have dish pistons most of the time, and there you have tons of piston valve clearance most of the time. The problem came in when the block, I decked the block 40 thousandths, and it was true decked, so it was like 0 all the way around with pistons installed in all 4 corners, and every single one of them had the same amount of deck on it, right? So it was 0 all the way around.
Yeah.
Then the head had already been cut, and they had to go through. These heads were ported by Joe Mondello in 1964, so I didn't want to throw them in the trash and just find something else, right? This was something that was literally like a work of art. If you looked at it, it was nostalgic to the core, and that's what the guy was building, was a nostalgia drag car, and these were the heads that you would have if you had a nostalgia 62, 63, 64 Buick. Mm-hmm. And they had, over the course of 40 years or whatever, it was a race motor that ran on methanol, so they didn't even run water in it. So they had carved into some of the water jackets and all kinds of stuff to make head studs fit and all kinds of crap. Well, I had to have all that welded up. And after I got those heads welded, they had to weld some of the chamber. It ended up it broke off a guide and ate a guide. and it had damaged a chamber and one of the valves pretty bad. And they welded it all up, cleaned it all up, but then they, of course, recut the head and take 10, 12 thousandths off, right? And the guy says, these were already cut, I'm pretty sure, because the chamber's like supposed to be 37 cc, and I think it's probably about 27. I'm like, yeah, let me go measure it. And so I went home and I measured it, and it was about 29 and a half, and which brought the compression to 13.76 on that little motor. And yeah, it was ideal. It's aluminum head, so it's just like having 12.76, so you can run it on regular race gas, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But I went to put it all together, and that's where I found that, see, it's a 305 Chevy piston I was using. In the Chevrolet, I never even thought about it. The valve is located further down in the bore because they're at 23 degrees instead of 15 like a Buick.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do now? Right? Because I checked my piston to valve clearance, and it was like 3 thousandths on the exhaust side, and I want to say I had like 18 thousandths on the intake or something. And I'm like, yeah, I can't run that. It'll bend the exhaust valve. Like as soon as it starts to get any heat in the motor, it's going to bend that sucker.
Yeah.
So I had to order the tools and cut them, and I didn't have a choice. I had the short block was already together, and what I did was I just bought one for each, one tool for each individual cylinder, right? Well, I'm sorry, one tool for each individual valve. And what I did is swap them from each cylinder to cylinder as you went down and down the block. What I found was the best way to do it was and be consistent about it. Originally, I had just set up the first one, and then I just mocked everything off the first one, and I got my dial indicator, and I put it on the end, and I bottomed it out after I'd cut it, so I knew exactly how far I had cut.
Yeah.
And then that's what I did on when I put it in the second one, and then I went through the rest of the 7 cylinders. I just used a feeler gauge and set the exhaust side and set the intake side with it bottomed out against the piston. So you knew, like when you pushed it all the way down, when you did the first one, and you knew how far down it was, right? That's how far it needed to go total. How many thousandths you put it in. On the other side, you just set the collar for where it was a lock. You couldn't go beyond that. So then I just set it up and just keep going. And that's what I ended up doing. But I used I'm
going to be right back. My TV's going off for some reason. It just turned on. I'm going to turn it off. Weird.
Yeah, well, I ended up just using a couple rolls of masking tape and fill in all the bores. And the only thing that was exposed was just those notches that you were cutting at the time. So, all right.
Sorry about that, man.
No,
my
right.
TV just turned on all by itself, just out of the blue.
Well, today's been that way for me.
Yeah.
The guy who builds drive shaft killing small block Buicks. Yeah, Tom Brown's talking about the 300 Buick that the Jack the Giant Killer actually went to the track this weekend or this past weekend.
Yep.
First time out, it was supposed to be an epic thing. We're going to have numbers on it finally. And does a burnout and grenades the drive shaft into 3 pieces.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect engine. You did a great job.
Well, it damaged the car pretty good.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it tore the floor out of it. It broke the yoke off the rear end. It split the tranny in half. Broke it just clean off the bell housing.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
We should have told him, man, hey, man, I'm building this thing. Shit rolls downhill. You better make that stuff strong,
Yeah. Nope. Unfortunately, it was done. So he doesn't know what he's going to do yet. I think he's going to fix it, I hope.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, see, Andy's saying he'd sprayed 175 on it and let it eat.
Yeah, I've never gone over 200 on a worn out engine. I mean, I do have some gap on there. I did set them at 24 thousandths. I think it's 24 and 26 thousandths as factory on it. That's what I did with it when I built it. I couldn't remember. I built it so long ago. I had to get out my little cheat sheet. I mean, it's safe enough to run about just under 200 kit on it and call it good. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really don't care about it. I mean, if I spray it and I blow a ringland off, who cares? Really, I've got a 6.4 sitting right there. I'll put in it, but
Man, I would care. You got a lot of time and money in that thing.
Yeah, but it's just sitting there. What am I going to do with it?
That's how my T-Bird is. I actually thought about selling it, dude.
Dude, I was in that same boat. I've had that blue car in my trailer for 2 years in front of my house, and then I was just like, and when in October I took it out and put it in the garage in the one attached to the house, and then now I'm just like, this whole thing came out about, and I'm just like, I'm going to run this thing. That's going to be my goal, is to get this car running, and I want to go after the 1050 class. I was thinking, man, that if I just put a little juice on this thing, I could actually be a little bit competitive. But 6 O's with the 200 kit now, it's not really set up for that. It's it's an NA car.
Well, so Danny Boyd is asking what's the difference between the 300 and 350 heads. Valve size. Valve size is one thing that's different, but okay, it's a completely different head. It's actually probably I would have to say is like the 350 Buick head is like the first version of the LS head. It's a big, tall, narrow port, big and tall. The valves are probably an inch taller, just because the port is so dang tall. And then the valve arrangement is like a 455 Buick, where it's got the two Siamese intake ports on each ends of the heads, and then the Siamese exhaust port in the center. The 300 has the same valve arrangement as a nailhead Buick, where it has the Siamese intake valves in the center of the block, and then all four exhaust ports are separated. So it's a completely different head. The 300 head flows 146 CFM on the intake side for like the early model, or for the 66, 67 model heads, and the Buick 350 head flows 195 CFM on the intake side. So there's a considerable amount of difference there.
Yeah. The first one sounds like a Slant 6 head. The last one you just said 195 CFM. That's like a hopped up Slant 6 head.
Well, and it's a big difference when you're talking just apples to apples, right?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing today that someone was talking about on one of the Facebook Buick pages, someone was talking about putting a they saw my 4-liter Rover video, and they were going to put that head on a 300 Buick, and I'm just going to stab it on there and go. And I said, hey man, I was going to do another video on this. You might want to measure everything first, because I'm pretty certain the compression ratio is going to come out to about 16-1. You definitely want to do some homework if you have like what they call the Wildcat 355 with the flat top pistons in it. You're going to be hating life. That sucker's going to be way up there.
Yeah.
But
hey, I'm gonna go back to Travis Garage here. He was asking, Shane, how's that Slant doing with the fuel injection? Actually, it's doing great. Now that I put the fuel pump in the tank, I changed some things. I lowered the fuel pressure with the regulator, and I put smaller injectors on it. I went with the 3.6 injectors. It runs really good. In fact, it actually is not just running fat now. It's actually running like consistently good. And I'm trying to get some mileage out of it, and that's why I'm putting some time on it. In fact, now that my office now has moved to the Olive Branch location, which is a safer area.
Oh, did you finally move down there?
Yes, we moved last week. Actually, last week, the end of last week. And so I got a nice little spot there, and I'm overlooking the road there, which is really cool. So I'm going to start driving it, and we have nice upfront parking for the hot rods. So that is my daily driver. When I was in San Diego, that is the car that I drove every single day, and I'm going to start doing that again. Whether hot, cold, I don't care. It just is what it is. You just deal with it.
I saw this. Levi put Levi's backyard performances in the house. It says, "What up? Currently working on the Laguna." I swear to God, when I saw that, I thought it said iguana, right? And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Then I realized, oh yeah, he's got that Laguna S3, right?
He wishes we were in Tijuana eating barbecue iguana. Yeah, right.
Let's see. Jonathan Couchy asks, is there a valve lift duration, Shane, where you would get Wally notch the pistons on a small block Mopar, specifically a 360? I know their pistons were lower in the 340s and 318s.
Wally notch.
I'm assuming that it's just a typo. Yeah. Is there a valve lift or duration where you would notch the pistons in the 360s? I'm assuming what he's asking.
Oh, I ran a lot. The 509 cam, I believe the purple shaft cams were designed to go right into the 340s, 360s, 318s. The 509 cam, I believe it comes out to like 230 or something like that on a 110. Really, where you're really going to notch them is when you start tightening up the LSA and you start getting bigger duration on the exhaust, because it's not about the lift. It's really about duration and LSA, because it's not max lift. You're only dealing with this much lift usually when it's hitting the valve.
Yeah, it's just lift when the piston's up at the top dead center.
Yeah, it's when the basically the valve
overlap
is chasing the exhaust. Yeah, exactly. I do know that. The 509 cam, I believe, is as big as you can go. It really comes down to what the durations are. You're really going to have to measure, because there's so many different variations of the 360. It's impossible to say. I did have a camshaft that I used to use when I was street racing quite a bit, and that one actually worked really well. And it was my nitrous cam, but it was on a 114 LSA, but it had like big duration. It was 235, 245. The lift was pretty low, so it was basically called the cut nose cam. But it was designed for stock heads, so that way I could slam it in something, put a 250 kit to it and let her eat. And I would never even worry about piston valve clearance, because it had such a wide lobe separation. It had really lazy lobes on it, so they were not opening fast.
Yeah, it would have been like a late 70s, early 80s stock Illuminator cam, where they had to have the lift rules on them, where you could pretty much manipulate the duration to death.
Yep.
And the good thing was generally when you do that, you can use almost a stock spring.
Yeah, that's what I used. I used a stock spring. I would just shim them, because they would run them like 100,000 as far as before a coil bind. So I had 50,000 shims I would put underneath there, and I would just check for coil bind, and it literally would I had a spring checker, and I would check it, and I would get about 130 or 140 on the seat at that point, and about 3 something over the nose. So it worked really good.
Yeah. Well, Danny Boyd's saying, I remember seeing a kit which made a fixture so you could notch pistons in the block. I tell you what, I bought these cutting tools, and they had the same size stems on the valve, and I just drop them in the head and bolt the head on and start cutting.
Yeah, put the thing at TDC and shove it down.
Yeah, that's what I did. And it worked pretty good. And it actually went fast after you get because the first one I was sweating bullets. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And am I going to ruin these set of pistons that are like, God, I don't remember what they were for a 305 Chevy Sprint car, and I had to have the block board 46 over, so it already had a super weird bore, and but the pistons were like custom order for 305 Sprint Stroker 305 Sprint car, and it's like, you're talking like it's odd stuff by the time you get up there. So Jonathan Couchy is saying, if you were clear with 1.5 rockers, would going up to 1.6 rockers put you in danger of valves hitting the pistons, or does that have more to do with valve timing events?
No, you're going to gain. Usually, we did this one time. You're going to gain about 2 degrees or so.
Is it 2?
It's about 2 degrees. It really depends on the ramp rate. It's about 1.5 degrees one way and about 1.5 degrees the other, so about 1 degree or so. Okay. It really doesn't change it much. You gain most of it in the mid range, but it's not really going to change it much. I believe it changed it like because you're barely changing the duration. I think it went from a 1. Now I'm just going off from memory now, but I think it went from like 120 to like 110 piston to valve clearance on the exhaust when I would change the rockers. So it didn't really change much.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people jump in here.
It's good.
Dean Stevenson, Bear Rose Garage, Clint Street Machines is in here. Big Belly Racing. Man, that's a lot of people jumping in here in the last few minutes.
Good. There's a lot of new names that I haven't seen before. So, yeah.
Yeah, Michael Schmidt says, I'm late to BAT Tech, but glad to be BAT late. Bat Tom, yeah. Did you like the thumbnail?
Dude, that was awesome, man. I dug it because that is such us. You know what I mean?
I know, man. I was like, oh, you know what's funny is all I did was cut those little pieces out and stick them on there. I didn't have to change anything. It just like literally fit where their faces were at. And
you know what's funny is that when I saw the thumbnail, you remember the guy on what was his name, Beaker on the me
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was when I first saw you. I was like, "That's Beaker." Oh, wait, no, that's Dallas.
Yeah, that's because the head was so tall. It's actually not in proportion to Robin's head, right? But it like he was so young and his face was so small compared to my big fat old face. All right, so Big Billy Racing wants to know, Professor P, what car is that Gen 3 Hemi going in?
Actually, two different cars. I have two engines going in two different cars. My 68 Dodge Dart, which is going to be my road race car, that is got a TKX transmission. It's going to have a 6.1 with eagle heads. That's the one you can watch in my channel that I've been building. And then my 66 Dart is going to get a 6.4 eventually with some boost to it. I'm going to go after the 8.5 class for drag week. So I'm going to run that 850 class for drag week with that car eventually. That's my end goal with it. I want something I can drag drive, because that's a really fun stuff to do. I mean, if you've never done that, you got to go do a drag and drive event. You know.
Well, so Tom Brown's saying that, Shane, is there a special cam profile for propane powered engines, longer exhaust duration, etc.?
I never did. Honestly, I would just widen the LSA.
I know they have a higher octane. Propane is higher octane.
Yeah.
And you could probably take advantage of it. But here's what those things don't fall under emission requirements, right? So
you could probably get away with something.
I was going to say you could get some kind of gnarly cam in there, because it would not smog up.
You can't have any intake reversion on those. You can't have anything go back into the reversion on those.
Because it's a gas.
Yeah, it's a gas. And I built a few of those, but we had to widen the LSA, I think, out to like 116 on one of them. I think of them, when I do a propane engine, I'm thinking of like something that has like a jet boat, that has got water jacketed headers. So that way you don't get any, suck on it, essentially going back in. That's all I tend to do on it.
I remember seeing propane powered, I want to say super gas car in like the early to mid 80s at the U.S. Nationals. It might have been the King Kong car or Godzilla but I think the King Kong was like a little Omni or something, Dodge Omni, maybe something like that. And I believe that car had a propane setup on it, because I remember looking at it. My old man and I looked at it like, what kind of weird carburetors that guy got going on over there? And it's like this, you see like this pressure regulating valve with pipes coming around. And you're like, what in the hell is that?
Hey, someone popped in here that I didn't even get to say hi to. Mopar Al. I got to meet Mopar Al this weekend in again. He came to the house. He got some 6.1 stuff from me. He got a intake and some cylinder heads. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Well, good deal.
Yeah.
See, that's the community helping the community, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Hippie Miller said, what would you gap rings on a small block Chevy 388 stroker with 200cc aluminum heads? What are you going to use it for?
Exactly. I was just going to say. And what I mean, there's so much. I think we talked about this, was it last week or the week before?
Yeah, and everything has to do with the bore.
Yeah.
Okay, how much bore size you have. And that 388 stroker is a 60 over small block Chevrolet, so 4060 bore. And I don't know what the math is off the top of my head. You're probably going to come out to about 20 thousandths if it's naturally, if it's naturally aspirated. If you're running it on, if you're going to hitting it with nitrous, it's probably going to need to be somewhere up of like 26,
28. Yeah, depends on how much juice you put to it. Yeah, right in there, 26, 28. Yeah, and then if you're going to be a high revving thing where you're going to be like the reason why mine's a 4040 bore on my engine, but I went with 24 thousandths is because it's high compression and there's going to be a lot of cylinder pressure on there, so it's got like 13-to-1 compression on it. So I went with a little larger on it.
Man. But if you, Hippie Miller, if you know exactly what you're going to use it for and throw it up here, I'll tell you pretty much an idea of what you need to do, I guess. Jonathan Couchy, right duration is changed by 1.5 degrees or so, knowing I have good clearance with it. Okay, so he's just justifying what you said.
Yeah, and that works. And it's about that. There's obviously, depending on ramp rates and how fast the ramps are, that's where you're going to see the biggest duration at 50 change. But you really see it in the meat at like say 200 lift. That's where you gain it, and that's where that's where the value of a higher rocker arm ratio is not really off the seat. It's really in the mid range.
So, Michael Schmidt says, got a pair of Octagain water injectors that mount on top of dual single barrel carbs on a flathead Plymouth. Any clue if they make power at top end like water or alcohol injection suggestions? All right.
Okay, I'm reading this again. Got a pair of Octagain.
It's just an aftermarket water injector.
Oh,
right?
So it's like a water meth injection then.
Right. It actually, okay, so 61, 2, 3 was when the General Motors came out with the first turbocharged engine that they did, which was that 215 Buick and the aluminum motor for the Olds, the 215 Olds version of the GM. I don't know what you would call it, the standard GM 215 engine. Mm-hmm. But it had water methanol injection on it. It was called Boost Juice.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, that was the first time that was used in an automotive application. Before that was used in aircraft during, I think, World War II. But what I found is that you can go get the blue window cleaner, right?
It works just as good.
And mix it with demineralized water, and then 50-50, and voila, Boost Juice. And I would run that through there, and I guarantee you it'll make more power because you don't have to pull any timing. You can set it up to where it's detonating on just garbage fuel, and then spray that crap in there at wide open throttle, and then all your detonation will go away. It just doesn't last very long.
No.
And Michael Schmidt says we have the best thumbnail ever.
We do. You do good work, man. Bravo.
Well,
I think
thanks.
it's awesome.
I told you I was going after the automotive duos, and it had to be. Yeah, I'm trying to debate on. I sat down. I had something in mind, and when I looked up great automotive duos, that picture came up. I'm like, oh, I'm sold. It's got to be Batman and Robin, right? But I was looking for a speed buggy. Right? You remember speed buggy?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. I thought that one would be cool. But, all right. Tom Brown says, in North Dakota, I just need a PCV valve. That's it. No cats. So we can get away with lots of stuff. That's what's good about living in Tennessee. Well, up to about, 2 years ago, we had California emissions here.
Really?
Yeah. Where I lived, the 9 counties surrounding Nashville, he had it. And, I was sweating bullets every year when that came up.
They would never get away with that in the Memphis area. Nobody even has license plates here.
That's what my buddy Jeremy that lives over there told me that.
Yeah.
He said that people don't even renew their license plates. They'll just screw the
drive-out
emissions
tags.
thing.
Yeah, they just have a drive-out tags. 90% of the cars that drive on the 240, which I call the Mad Max Freeway, where every week you see a car on fire, you don't see anything there. So, yeah, as far as tags go.
Oh, Big Belly Racing. Professor, does anyone make a close to stock? Well, I'm going to tell you what I do know. Way back when you used to have the Bible, the PAW Bible, Crane cams used to reproduce all the factory muscle car cams. Mm-hmm. With the demise of Crane, I know Comp owns them. But I don't know if they make a muscle car cam anymore.
Well, it's a close to stock one is like, I believe it's like 212, 218 on a 112 LSA. And I think I'm looking at it right here on the comp cams setup right now. Let's see. Yeah, it's on a 110. Yeah, look at cam. It's an XE256H. That's a 212, 218 on a 110. It's going to be a little tighter than factory, but it'll actually run a little better with the tighter LSA right there. You're not really going to notice it much. If you want the next step up, I would go with this one here. It is part number XE262H. That's 218, 224. That's also on a 110 LSA. That's going to give you a little boogity boogity. That will actually give you that 340 muscle car sound.
Danny Boyd's saying that my Fox body had propane air conditioning for a summer. I would run the AC with the top down. Propane was the ticket when R14, was that what it? R12. R12 got to be hard to get, like in the mid to late 90s. Mm-hmm. Propane was the go-to thing. and just make up a jig, and voila, you'd have propane. You just definitely didn't want to have a problem like, I don't know, get in an accident. Crush that condenser.
Right?
Yeah.
I still have about 10 cans of that R12.
Oh, do you?
The actual 1 pound cans. When they used to be 99 cents, it still has Kmart on it, and it's 99 cents. Yeah.
Huh. Let's see.
Mopar Al, he shows up at my house, and he's got this Charger, and it's white. It literally was the Blues Brothers. It's got cop car, cop brakes, cop tires, cop lights, cop this, cop that. It's a white car coming in my driveway. Literally, I was getting out the old, what's he coming for? You know what I mean? Yeah. Why is there a cop pulling in my driveway?
Take it from my cold dead hands.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I come out and then it's Al. I'm like, dude, don't do that again.
Yeah, drive something different. Drive your truck.
Right?
Yeah. Well, he came and got some stuff for the car he's working on now?
I can't say nothing.
Oh, you got to keep it on the deal, huh?
Well, he just got some heavy stuff. That's all he got.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he drove all the way from this area to over there.
Well, it's funny. Just the last week, he was about a mile from my house, and I was in the process of moving our stuff from one building to the next, and I guess he had called me, and I left my phone at my office, and I had to go. I was going back and forth moving all my computer and stuff, and I guess I just missed him. He called me as soon as I got my phone. I called him up and was like, "Yeah, dude, come on over." And he goes, "Oh, we're already half full in Nashville." And I was like, "Damn." So
sucks.
yeah.
Yeah, so Danny Boyd saying he went from a 1.6 to a 1.7 in my Fox 5.0. I noticed the difference right away. It pulled harder at wide open throttle, and it sounded a bit cooler. The ticket for the 5-liter Ford used to be you put an Motorsports cam with those 171 Cobra roller rockers, and that sucker was a freight train from 2,500 to 65.
Yeah, and that's where you're going to notice it really is in the mid range, because you're really opening up the mid lift to the max lift. That's where you're going to notice the rock arm ratio.
So 38 POS Racing asks, how bad of a combination would a 5.3 LS with twin turbos from a 78 Regal 3.8 be? Of course, after modified to not be draw through. Dude, that's like the worst turbo in the planet.
Yeah, it would be okay. I mean, it'd be fine, but it's not the greatest turbo in the world.
Oh yeah, that thing has literally like a 90-degree bend at the end of the turbo outlet that goes into the manifold. I can't see you picking an even worse turbo, it would last a lot longer because that thing was a draw-through turbo, so it'd draw air and fuel through the turbine side, and it would just eat that bearing in there. Mm-hmm. But
start compressing that fuel. That's the problem. You compress that fuel, it's like hitting that thing.
Yeah, it just ruined the bearing in them. But I imagine it would probably work. I don't know. I don't think it would be all that awesome because that thing has like a 90-degree bend off that outlet of the inducer, right? And that is because that's the way it was bolted on the intake manifold. It just sat on it had like a foot, and it just sat on this foot with 3 bolts that hold it on. All right, so instead of the stock 340 cam, I would want to run the XE256H cam, but on a 108 instead of a 110 LSA.
We can make it. It's a custom cam then at that point. No big deal. We just take it and just tighten up the LSA. But honestly, by moving it 2 degrees from 10 to 8, you're never going to notice that. I promise you that. If you wanted, especially with that small of a camshaft, you're never really going to gain much on just by paying for that. If you're really going to make a custom cam, then make a real good custom cam at that point. But you would never notice 2 degrees tighter.
So Abel D is asking, this is a pretty Dallas, helicoil or mil-spec nut inserts for a Rover V8. One head has 5 stripped head bolt threads on the block. This block will be a mule to learn how many repairs a block can take. And I'm assuming it's the block that's stripped out because there isn't really any bolt holes in the head except for the intake manifold bolt holes. And if they're the intake manifold bolt holes, I would probably just use a helicoil. Yeah. A helicoil is stainless steel, right? It's like twice as strong as the aluminum head on that 215.
Yeah.
But if it's in the block, I would probably do a helicoil on the block.
I would do a king cert, like an actual king cert. Yeah, that's what I would do if it's in the block. Do those go into water jackets then, right?
No, they're blind.
They're blind. I still would do a king cert, man. I like the king cert.
There's only it's not even quite 4 bolts per cylinder. It's because they're sharing some, right? The other heads for that for the Oldsmobile actually has another setup. Well, actually, no. The 215 Buick has a whole extra row of bolts, so it has 5 bolts per cylinder essentially, and the Oldsmobile has 6. So, I think I don't know what a king cert is, Shane. So, it sound dumb here.
It's basically an insert, and it's got 4 rods that stick up, and then what you do is you hammer down each rod, and it basically locks it in place. So that way, imagine like an insert. Have you ever seen an insert that goes into like a threaded hole? So you drill it out bigger.
Like a nutsert?
Yeah, it's like a nutsert, but a king cert has these 4 rods sticking up, and then you get out a punch and you hammer those down. So what it does is it cuts the thread, so there's no way to take a king cert out. It will never come out once you put it in.
Huh.
Yeah.
I do have something that's pretty interesting that I'm going to be throwing together in a video here really soon.
Okay.
I should probably say something about it because it's just like it's cool to talk about, and I don't know how hacky it is, but all right. So I'm always fixing these timing covers. These Buick timing covers are aluminum, and I take it to a guy and he TIG welds them, right? And it costs about $150 for a quarter 20 bolt hole to get welded up, and now the prices went up, right? And it's to the point where I should probably go buy a TIG welder. But I needed to get this one done, and I'm like, okay, well, this is for my stage 1. Let me see what I can do. And I came up with this thing. You could JB weld the hole and then drill it and tap it and put some helicoil in it. But what I did was I took a whole bunch of like an old timing cover and I ground up the aluminum and then I mixed it with JB Weld and it made it hard as a freaking rock, man.
It's perfect. I use shavings.
That's what I did.
JB Weld.
Yeah, and it's like
awesome.
it's like OSB, but it's for aluminum. And now you don't even need a welder anymore, right?
No.
It's like I bet it's hard as the timing cover.
That's actually how I did my Slant 6 intake. There was
really?
a part. Yeah, there was a part where there's one bolt hole that is designed so that way it mounts the exhaust manifold to it. It's the inner one, and where it goes through, you can't cut out the 4 bolt holes without it interfering there. So I mixed in aluminum into the JB Weld and packed that sucker in there.
Yes,
and it is like I'm
telling you, man. When I got it, I'm like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just drill it and tap. And when I was drilling, it's like, God, man. I mean, I've drilled JB Weld before, and it goes in pretty easy.
Yeah,
this was not like that. No.
Yeah, no.
It was not fast. And then when you tap it, it's like, holy cow! You swear to God, it's metal.
Yeah. King certs, basically they call them key locking thread insert or king cert. So yeah, check them out. Huh. You should. They're phenomenal. I use them quite a bit.
Okay, well, here's something interesting. Bicycle Guy 111 says, "Hey guys, came across some Elgin intake valves for a small block Chevy.
Yep.
Swirl polished stainless. What is it? Stellite tipped, 20160. That sounds like a LS size valve, but they say made in India. Should I try them?
Let's see why not.
Well, I'm sure Elgin has to have some kind of quality assurance program.
Yeah.
And they're not just going to pick up garbage, right?
Yeah.
But they're obviously they've outsourced it. But they would have to meet the Elgin the standards.
Yeah, and also too, what I do with valves, if I'm unsure, weigh them. If they all weigh the same, it's a quality place. If they're all over the board, probably don't want to use them. That's how I normally do it.
What Danny Boyd says, R134A is flammable too, I think, and makes poisonous gas when it burns. Most gases will. Once you get to a certain point, there used to be one that the Navy used on the ships. It was called halon. I can't remember. There was a number after it, like halon 121 or something. I don't remember what it was, but we used to call it halon, right? And halon would turn into a gas when it got to like 600 degrees or 1,000 degrees or something. It would turn into this gas that would kill you. And
Yeah.
we use it in the entire main spaces on the ship, it's like where all the main engines are and stuff. The all right, I don't know if R134 is flammable or not. To tell you the truth,
I don't. I never tried that. That's something I've never done. I've got one out there. I might just stick a hole in it and light a match and see what happens.
Yeah, well, you do. I don't know if you saw my video last year where I went and took the heads off that Rover,
Yeah.
that 4-liter Rover, and it was a complete motor in the truck, and I had to disassemble the whole motor in the truck, and I took the AC off. It was in the way, and you know how like you go to the junkyard, they drain the oil, they drain the water, they drain the transmission fluid, gear lube, and generally the Freon.
Yeah.
So here I am like, well, I'll just get my Sawzall and I'll buzz through this line. And I mean, it was like, I'm cutting through this, and it must have had like 900 gallons of dye in it. Because I'm cutting into it, and there was this guy walking by, and it was like, boom, and this huge cloud of like fluorescent yellow dye. And it was all over my face and my eyes. And this dude's like, you all right, buddy? I mean, I'm like, I'll probably be all right. And about 20 minutes later, it was hard to see. That stuff, whatever it is that gets in your eyes, it does not like to come out.
Yeah.
And I thought about going to wash it out, but damn it, somebody was going to get my heads. So I went into the up front, and I just got the, where they have that sink, and you just wash your face off. That's about all I did.
We're gonna pull we're gonna do a John Wilburn here. Bryant sent me, Dust Devil Garage sent me, that's a king cert. Can you see it?
Oh yeah. Okay.
So that's what a king cert is. So that way you screw it in, and then you hammer those pins down, and it locks it in place. So that way it never comes out. The only problem with the king cert is that you see how much bigger you have to drill and tap the hole.
Oh yeah.
So usually king certs are a second. So you use a helicoil first. If that pulls out, then you use a king cert. Or if you just never want to mess with it, you got plenty of room, king cert right off the bat.
Huh. Well, when I was doing that JB Weld thing, John Wilburn said, just run that helicoil in there with the wet JB Weld. He's like, it'll never come out again.
It'll never. But you might not get your bolt in there too. I've done that, and I couldn't get it in.
I was afraid that when he said that, I was afraid that because see, it's very hard to do to run a tap down through something that's been helicoiled.
Yes, because it's round. It's not it's not triangled. So.
Yep. Let's see. My what is it? What Zonda 2B says my 72 Slant 6 225 Valiant made 70 horsepower and 140 foot-pounds of torque in the stock 1920 and exhaust.
The stock 1920 is the carburetor, so it's a Holley 1920 single barrel.
90 mile an hour, and everything was below 4,000 RPM. I'm assuming what that is.
This is exactly what the wife's car, the Beaver, this is exactly what it is. It literally is probably this exact thing. 70 horsepower, 100 foot-pounds of torque. It's got a 1920 carb on it, and it does everything below 4,500 RPM. Everything. It won't go over that much. It's still got the stock 1.5-inch exhaust all the way out.
Oh, the puny one.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, Dr. Art is showing up.
Oh, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I missed his lives on Monday. I've been jumping through my own butt trying to make stuff happen every day.
We're quite a far behind. We should probably jump some of this.
I'm jumping up right now. I'm actually pretty far ahead. Let's see.
Oh, Dizzy Izzy. Good night, buddy. I missed him. He went good night.
So, 38 POS Racing says R12 makes Farzen gas when heated.
Ooh. Did he forget the T? Make fart jokes are funny.
That's why you use a Schrader valve puller first. I just kind of assumed I took it for granted that they had
taken it out.
Had removed the R134. That's what happens.
I've never got a tank at the wrecking yards because they've always hammered a hole in them.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what I was surprised. I just that's been something that they've done for a long time now.
Yeah.
So let's see. Doug Narden says last Sunday I grabbed a rear sump oil pan and pickup tube for big block Dodge truck, some tall valve covers for Roll the rockers one step closer to making the 413 run.
Nice.
Also got my dipstick and tube today.
Nice. Nice. I like to hear that. I like progress.
Oh, well, Hook, Line, and Fishing says your kinks hurt. He uses them every day at work.
Yeah, they're great. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan Couchy says, anybody ever run one of those Pro Comp $250 1.6 rockers? Not expecting much, but did it just to see. So what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never run them. I've only run Comp and the Crowder rockers. Oh, and T&D. I have T&Ds also.
Oh, let's see. Danny Boyd said, I've never known anybody that had 413 and never knew they made them up until 1979. Yeah, them industrial ones.
Yeah. Well, they put them in a lot of trucks and also a lot of cars too. I seen them in some of the cars. They were pretty cool. They pretty thick blocks, you know.
Hook, Line, and Fishing. I haven't got it yet. Shane and I have had plans to meet up, like I think 3 times now. And everything just keeps getting pushed off to the side. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get it from them one day. But and don't worry. I mean, it's
in
not
perfect
going
condition.
anywhere.
Look, it's in perfect condition.
Dude, look at that picture on the back. Look at that commercial on the back.
Right?
Isn't that bitching?
Isn't that? Look at that.
Dude,
when he handed this to me, I had to like drool over it for a second. You know, look at the cutting edge picture. Can you see all the? Look at those engines and the dude.
Hey, you know what, Shane? I think what we should do is get together and you and I should reduplicate these pictures and we'll just put a bunch of Mopars on stands and we'll get a black suit and tie,
dude,
and just duplicate the whole thing.
I'm so down for that. We'll
Wouldn't
do
that be so funny?
That'd be so awesome. A hot rod Slant 6, your Buick stuff, and then that would be awesome, dude.
It really would. I think it would be cool because I mean, if you look at it, like from the '60s, they always had the black suit and tie thing going on, and they look like they're a G-man, you know, and then you get surrounded by 50 different freaking motors on there, and it would be cool to do something like that.
On this thing, if you look at the tunnel ram, this is the one that I enjoyed the most. Right here. Yeah, right.
The homemade tunnel ram.
Yeah, right there. Look at that thing.
That's a 455. That's a big block Buick.
That is the most awesome thing. I stared at that forever. All the rest of them are kind of cool, but that one is just amazing. Look at the plumbing volume.
Okay, you remember I told you last year when they were in the middle of that drought that we should have went out to California to Lake Havasu and pulled an experimental Buick intake manifold out of Lake Havasu. That would have been just like that.
Oh,
that's what we would have went and got, was something like that. There's a whole entire boat with a big block Buick that GM tested out there that had a dual high-rise dual quadrajet intake manifold for it.
Dude, we should just go. You know, I can.
Well, now it's rained out there. I mean, it's like probably full, just as full as it normally is.
Dude, I have scuba gear. Let's go out there and get it.
You're down there taking the bolts off. A Buick big block has 7/16 bolts, and they've been down there for 50 years. I don't know if you're going to get them out that easy.
You know, at that point, I would try to figure out a way to make
get the whole motor.
just take the whole damn thing out. Bring a sawzall down there or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, you know what? That's so simple. Damn it! You know what? I was in the Navy for a long time. This is easy. We go buy an inflatable raft from the nearest store
and just
you
pump
tape
it.
Yeah, you freaking tie it to that motor and just pull a cord, right?
Yeah. That's what I would do. Yeah.
Okay, so Doug Narn saying there was an emblem on his motorhome that said High Performance 413. I saved it for the shop truck.
That's so awesome.
I love, stuff like that. I do like those motors. And if that's an industrial application 413, I don't know if they're a taller deck or anything like that, but I really do like that oddball stuff. The 413 was an absolute killer in the 60s, right? Before they came out with the 426 Max Wedge.
Yep. Yeah, that was I love those 413s because they got really good the ones that I've sonic checked, they're really thick on the walls, and so they were just really good with not having any bore distortion or vibration going through them, at high RPM. So,
man, who is saying that? I just saw something here. Okay, Travis Mopar, or is it Twisted Mopar Garage, says compression doesn't make as big a difference as a lot of people think. You're wrong.
Well, now
it depends upon the chamber size or with the chamber design. The chamber design has a lot to do with it.
Yes, and there's a lot of factors. Okay, let's give an instance. On my Gen 3 Hemi that I have built for my road racing car, it literally will make almost. It's negligible. I could go from 9.5 all the way up to 11.5 compression, and I'll barely gain anything because it's a very efficient head, and it's done. But an engine that sucks, like my Slant, not even a Slant 6. Let's just call it my LA engine, that has a really crappy chamber. Compression does make a huge difference in that one.
Well, compression will make up for poorly flowing valves or poorly flowing heads, right? Mm-hmm. Compression also, like, okay, I'll give you, for instance, and everyone's heard the stories firsthand. When Chrysler first came out with the Hemi, and what is it, 64? Didn't they run the Indy in Daytona in 64, and that's where they just whacked the mystery motor when that thing came out of the box, right? But when they went drag racing, it wasn't all that fast. It wasn't too scary. But it wasn't until like Landy and Sox and Martin figured out that you put high compression in that Hemi. And they were talking about, Bullet Bob Reed was actually talking about it during an interview, that he has unloading his brand new 409 Chevrolet, him and his dad. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I want to say he said it was a Sox and Martin, or it was maybe Bill Jenkins was unloading a brand new Hemi car. And when they hit the key, Bullet Bob Reed's dad started putting the car back on the trailer. Right? He said, there's no point in even unloading the car. That sucker's got it right there. Right? Yeah. And Bob Reed said that it was like a completely different sound than any other car at the track. Yeah. And it was all compression.
Yeah.
But, all right. Let's see. Hook, line, and fishing. Cam timing has a lot to do with compression. Dynamic compression is what counts. Yes. I agree with that. But static compression just gives you a good idea of what it's supposed to be there.
Well, and speaking of that, yeah, static compression is where when you start dealing with camshaft, and that's when you set your static compression is to what camshaft. It's a combination of parts. So you just, if you're going to run this cam with this, you're going to need 12.5 to 1 compression. That as far as your overlap triangle, that's how you kind of figure that out.
For static, yeah. Mm-hmm. But dynamic compression ratio is probably going to, with the camshaft installed, is probably going to be closer to like 10.5.
Yeah. And then that's when you start playing with timing as far as advancing and retarding the camshaft, so you can figure out the sweet spot for that.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Danny Boyd says, my dad was not a hot rodder at all. I feel sorry for you guys that didn't have that, because my old man was just as ate up with it as I am, and that's where I got it from. But my dad wasn't. My dad was an accountant. How did it start for you, though?
Honestly, I was adopted. Okay. So, now, honestly, I just had this, I wanted to race motorcycles. When I grew up in Southern California. So it was all about, dirt bike racing and desert racing. And I did both of them. And my dad, he was intelligent enough to know that if I wanted to do this, I would have to learn how to fix it. So he bought me a motorcycle, not telling me that. And then when it was time to fix it, I told him, hey, Dad, we need to get this fixed. And he goes, well, go ahead and fix it. So he went out, and the tools I still have today, he went out and got me that big, Master Craftsman tool set. Remember that? It came in a little box.
Right.
Still.
Yep.
I still have those to this day. I still have them. And we went down and bought a manual, because I used to build Legos and stuff, like little Lego cars and stuff.
Right. You bought it for the bike?
Yeah. So he bought that for that, and I just literally did step by step by step by step. And then pretty soon I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then I started learning how to tune it. I started reading the book on how to do this. And then I started doing oil changes on the cars. Like I could actually make a little money. I'm like, I could just change the oil and I'm going to make $10. You know, back then, $10 was a lot. You know,
Well, in our generation, we literally like you did almost anything for money. That's what I noticed is like none of that stuff happens these days.
Yeah,
right?
we're talking about the mid '80s, right? So I'm changing oil, and then the neighbors down the street, he did salt flat racing, Bonneville salt flat racing, and then a bunch of people around the street had some muscle cars. So that's really what got me into it was that, you know, and watching the drag racing. And my uncles, I had some uncles that were really into it. So,
Well, and you're lucky. You grew up in Southern California in the 80s when it was actually, that was still
Cool.
the place to be for hot rodding, right?
Yep.
Craig Chitto saying, how much can pistons stick out of the hole? That's kind of that's a open-ended question, really, you know, because it all depends upon camshaft and how big the valves and
Cylinder head, gaskets.
Yeah, the type design of the chamber. Is it an open chamber? Is it a closed chamber?
Mm-hmm. My LA engine that I'm building right now, the pistons stick out of the hole 20 thousandths. The 20 thousandths out of the hole. And the reason why I did that is because I'm trying to get as much squish out of that cylinder head as I can get. I'm trying to get as much bang I can out of it.
For a race engine, that seems to be kind of the normal thing. You could get upwards of, I've seen anywhere from 10 thousandths to 40 thousandths out of the hole, right? And all that really depends upon how thick the head gasket is and how tight you're trying to make that chamber. Because if it's a closed chamber head, what you want is you want the top of that piston to leave like a dust ring on that chamber. Otherwise, you're leaving power on the table.
That's right. Actually, Joe Sherman, I was pretty good friends with him, right? And he would tell me, we were talking cams and one time, and we were talking engines. I was down at his shop over there, and he was telling me that if he ran an engine and he took the heads off and there wasn't marks from the intake valve and the exhaust valve in the carbon on the piston, then it wasn't tight enough. That's what he would look for, is the marks of the valve in the carbon.
And that's perfect.
And then he would look at the top of the piston under the quench area, and he would look for literally no carbon in that quench area. That means it was perfect. He says that's how he did it.
That's you leaving the dust mark, right? And you've heard them before. If you're a drag racer and you've been at the drag strip and you hear the, like, say, generally what you hear them is, and the first time I ever heard it was a rear Morrison engine at the U.S. Nationals, right? But you'll hear a lot of the big dragster engines, when they go by, they squeak. They're like, you know, like instead of, you still have your thump, 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 but it'll squeak as it's thumping.
Yep.
And that squeak it's so tight, right, at the top of the cylinder that there's less than like a thousandth of what happens is it literally becomes like a whistle.
Yep.
Right? So
it's funny that you say that, because that's how you know you got the combination correct. It has a little beep, beep, little, you know, it almost sounds like a wheel going out on a lifter when it's correct. It does.
Oh crap, JB's little shop, man, dude, that sucks. My
Sucks,
father
dude.
passed when I was around 4, but the first time I stood by a hot rod, I was hooked. And my grandfather was nothing but a Mopar head, so been playing with this stuff since then. You know, and that's what. I don't know if you saw Ted. Like, some of you guys may or may not look at the AHRA Facebook stuff. I put a post up there that literally had very little to do with race cars. It actually had a dad and a little boy leaning over the hood of an old Dodge truck.
I saw that.
Did you? Did you like what it said?
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
It said, for those of you that missed it, it said on the picture, it said, real child support has nothing to do with money.
Exactly.
Right?
100%.
Yeah. So... And that's what JB got. It sounds like that, you know, his grandpa, because his dad passed away, his grandpa stepped up and taught him right, you know, guided him down the path. So, being a big gearhead.
Yeah. You know, my uncle had an Oldsmobile. Now he called it the Rocket. It was the old R Code 350, old Cutlass. I still remember that. That was cool. I was just reminiscing about that. Yeah.
So Danny Boyd, it reminds me of something I used to do when I was a kid. My dad used to run a gas station when I was a kid, right? And in the gas station, you always walked in and you paid your bill generally in cash, and they'd be pumping your gas at this gas station, right?
Yeah.
That was what it was a full service station. And when you went inside, that's when they had like little Dunk stuff. You had candy bars and soda pops, stuff like that you could buy.
Boston baked beans, remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, my dad would be like, "Hey, take this box of Clark bars and go sell them," right? And he would sell the Clark bars. I would take them around the neighborhood. You got a box of them. Most kids don't have a box of candy bars, right? Unless they're fundraising.
Yeah.
With like box of Clark bars that my dad's buying in bulk from whatever vendor he's got, and I'm just selling them to the neighbors around our house. So, trying to make a little bit of extra cash.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I wanted to say too, while we're looking up the next one, I've been really busy in my personal life. So people who have emailed me on Slant Daily Garage, it's not like I'm ignoring you. Honestly, I've got a lot of things going on, and I just popped it open to get onto the StreamYard here. I have 26 missed messages, so I'm sorry. I've been really busy lately, so I just haven't got around to it. So I'm hoping to get to it either this weekend. It's gonna be raining this weekend here, so I should have time. I'll get to everyone. So I apologize. I'm not neglecting. I have other things going on right now.
Oh, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, it seems like when I'm going to have a free week, something weird comes up, and literally that's how this week was. I mean, I just came back from Northeast Dragway, and my wife's got to go to a funeral, and it's in San Diego, so she's flying out on Tuesday morning, and it's like, crap, right? Now I'm having to pull all the load, and it makes everything hard.
I know that for real.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Doug Narden says, going to Bonneville is on my bucket list. Bringing something to race there would be even better. I want a 200-mile-an-hour red hat.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Bonneville's awesome. Everyone has to go at least once. Make sure you're at mile marker 3 or above, because they come in at that point. They're eating, and it sounds. You want the Doppler effect? There's the Doppler effect. Right there, that's just awesome.
There's so my whole life while I was stationed in the Navy revolved around being in the Navy. So I only took the time to go to, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear my Navy stories, right? But I would take the time to go to the things that you'd remember, right? Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to do Bonneville. I always wanted to do the very beginning of the Baja 1000, right?
Oh yeah.
Because there's nothing cooler than them lining them up on the street, and they're all taking off like a minute behind each other.
Yep.
And you're standing out there with like they used to bring you a bucket of Tecate beers, a bucket, right, filled with ice, and like 10 Tecates or 12 Tecates in a bucket. Yeah. And you just be out there cheering them on as they're going by, wide open throttle, jumping through the air 20 feet off the ground.
The best is to go to after the start where they drop down into the drainage ditch.
Yeah.
And that is the place to watch them, because they have those jumps set up where they're jumping the roads like they're doing like a $120, and they're just flat out.
That's where I wanted to be with my bucket of Tecates. That was it right there.
I've been there, and it is awesome. Then there's 20,000 other people doing the exact same thing, and it is absolutely epic. It is epic.
But there's always these little things I always wanted to do, and when he says this, going to Bonneville and bringing a car or whatever, it would not be beyond me to literally fly out there, rent a car, and see what I could get out of that rental car. I would enter that sucker into the
why not? Yeah,
land speed record race. I would take my rental car and let's see what it's going to do. The other thing was, when I lived in Australia, I was teaching Australian sailors my job, and in their Navy, and they had over in New Zealand, they had the Burt Munro Memorial Race. It happens on Thanksgiving in the United States, but it's that weekend every year down at Invercargill. You could run your bike on the beach, and it's a
like
race.
An Indian? Yeah,
right. I had set it. My wife was 9 months pregnant, and I set it up to fly over there to rent a motorcycle, and I was going to enter in that race just to run the race, dude.
That is awesome.
My wife being really pregnant, I got really cold feet. Like, last minute, right? She's like, "Are you sure this is something you want to do? Because if you miss the birth of the child, then, oh gosh, man,
twist my arm, man." You know that here's one for you. My wife was pregnant with the twins, and like literally about to blow. I had tickets to go to the March meet, and I went to the March meet, and she went into labor, and literally I made it from the March meet to there, and
By the time the kids were like just coming out, huh?
I wanted to say it correctly. I think it was like an hour or two. I was there, and here they come, just like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was too close.
So Danny Boyd says, one time my buddy went to pull a plug wire on a mower, which had a bad kill switch, and he got zapped, and the tape playing in his Walkman got marked with a static spot.
That is awesome.
That's funny.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that.
Oh, here, check this out. Tom Brown says, one of my earliest Gearhead memories was when I was 4, feeling the wind on my face in the back seat of my uncle's 69 RTSE Charger at around 130 miles an hour.
That's awesome.
When I was a youngin', my dad had this Stage 1 Buick that I'll eventually get to my channel one day. The car was a race car at that point. It was already a race car. He had fiberglass doors and hood and fenders that he made at home on this car.
That's
there was no interior in it. And every time he would take it out for a test pass, because he would always take it out for a test pass to make sure it was going to run before we loaded it up and took it to the track, he would put a spare tire where the passenger seat used to sit. And then I would sit in that thing, and I would ride out there. Had no seat belt on or nothing. I'm like 2-3 years old, and it's hammered down on this big block Buick from a dead standstill, right? And it was the most exhilarating thing as a young kid. And to this day, I still think about the smells, the sounds, how it felt, and I was freaking hooked. I mean, I don't think there was anything you could do that was ever going to change my course.
John Wilburn had me on his channel. He was asking about how I got into it. And I gave you guys some insight on how I started mechanically. But how I got into cars is my dad was an accountant. And so he knew that I was kind of getting into this automotive thing. I really like this mechanic style of life and things. And you guys have probably heard me say this a few times, but it made such an impression on me to this day. He was doing taxes for this guy who had a real SSA super stock A stick shift, 68 Dodge Dart Hemi 4-speed real car, the real deal car, and it had aluminum back seats, and then he put a little headrest on it, and we went down. This was when there was the Chicken Pie Diner in Poway, and we used to have a car show there I think it was every Wednesday night. And so we got there, and then this car, I could hear it just sound like war coming down the street. It was awesome. And it come through the parking lot, and he goes, "That's my friend." I had no idea what kind of car it was. It was loud, and it was awesome. And then he took me for a ride. And if you're familiar with Poway, there's a Pomerado Road, and we went up to this Casa Avenida Road, I think is what it was. And there's a light right there. And I remember him leaning over, and I remember him grabbing my seatbelts and pulling down on it, and he took my head and he put it back against the headrest. And I remember looking over at me, and I remember him putting it in first gear, and he had a light on the dash, and I think that was for the brake. And that light turned green, and that thing went right to the wood, and he just dropped the hammer on it. And I literally went into the seat, and I was frozen. And I remember looking at him and him grabbing second gear, and I remember pulling my feet away from the floorboard because I thought the engine was going to come through the floorboard. It was so loud. Yeah. I remember grabbing second gear, and I remember just hammering third gear, and he was speed shifting it each time. And each time it hit, the car would accelerate harder. And we went, and then he turned around at Promenade Hospital and then came back and did the same thing at the light going the other direction. From that day on, that was the greatest thing I've ever experienced in my life. To that day, even to this day, it made such an impression. I can smell it, I can hear it to this day. How that sound, I'm hearing it in my head, and that is what hooked me solid for my life. Basically, there's been no parole from this jail sentence of cars that I was given on that day. That was it. That was what hooked me.
And there's a lot about it. A lot of people throwing their first, I guess, run-ins with the automotive community.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Jonathan Couchy is saying that Shane, would it be possible to run a set of replacement pistons with similar weight as stock as high compression pistons without rebalance in a junkyard build.
Yeah, as long as it's the same weight, absolutely. And you don't have to. You don't worry about the piston so much. Worry about the pin. You can take more weight out of the pin, and sometimes I've even taken and reused the old pins if it's the same one.
I was gonna say the old pin is usually the better one, the OEM stuff.
Exactly, and it's just a better pin. So, I've done this, and 100%. So no problem, at all.
The pistons are actually kind of easy. What you do is you take the pins out of them all and weigh every single one of them up, and then you just get a Dremel, and there's on the inside of the piston, not like where the bore is at for the the wrist pin, but just on the back of the head of the piston. Just grind some out till you take enough out. Keep weighing it till they're all about the same.
Yep. And then what I do is I weigh the pistons, and then I weigh the pins, and the pins never weigh the same either. And then I match heavy with light and light with heavy, and just kind of go that way. And then just find the weight, find the lowest the lowest weight, and then make everything match that. It's really simple. Do it in an afternoon.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's kind of telling their stories. Yeah.
Danny Boyd saying, when my dad's brother got out of the Army, he took my dad and me for a ride in his Triumph. I think it was a Spitfire. Thing is, he had a new 68 Camaro SS 396 4-speed, which he had to sell when he got.
So. I got to tell you, man, imagine being, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old kid, never been in a muscle car. Never, right? Ever. My dad had an 86 Toyota Supra at that point, right? He just got it brand new. It was a twin turbo. No, I think it was 12. It was an 87 twin turbo Toyota Supra inline 6. I thought that car was fast. But then I rode in that car, and that ruined me. I from that point on, that was the car to get.
The thing that ruined me was literally the first time I put a performance part on, and it actually, you could feel the difference. I was ruined. Ruined from that point forward. Advanced curve kit for an HEI, ruined. Right? Done.
But that did it for me. That's been the progression. Each time I did a part, like I got my first car, and then I did this, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. But to go and get like the pinnacle car of the 60s, they only made so many of these things, and they were like the icon of drag racing. Even to this day, they have their own class. And to get in that car and go full throttle all the way through third gear and just be glued to the seat and frozen, that was something. That was absolutely something.
Yeah. And see, I guess growing up in the late 70s, early 80s also helped out a lot too, because you still had the automotive culture was still kind of centric in our regular culture and American culture, right?
Yeah.
During the off race season, they'd invite all the race cars from our local track, which was Motion Raceway, and they would sit up in the mall, in our local mall. And, the mall just had that big open areas in the center before they had like the keychain shop and the iPhone cover shop. And,
Yeah.
it was just an open spot, and they'd put cars in there with literally like roped off, and you'd leave your race car in there for a week, and it was actually kind of cool because it was like your culture was kind of formed around all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I agree.
So, I'm kind of kicking around the idea of un-EFIing my 94 Ford truck.
Oh, why not?
And just putting a freaking quadrajet carburetor on it. That's what I'm thinking.
You know what? Do the exact opposite of what I'm doing with the Slant 6. Get the mileage. You already know what the truck gets for mileage, right? And do a head-to-head comparison. Why not?
I think the thing would be an absolute murder. I do. I think it would be good.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just do a comparison. Is it worth it? Is it worth, getting the EFI? Does it run better with the carburetor? Is it more responsive? Does it do this, do that? That's exactly what I'm doing with this. And now that I actually have the smaller injectors on it, I think it's going to be comparable. And I'm going to run it just like this. My wife's going to drive it just like the way it is. To the No Name Nationals. She's going to come up on Friday. She's actually going to drive that car with the 3 kids all the way up there, and I'm going to come up on Wednesday. And she's going to drive that thing all the way up there, and I'm going to race it up there and see what it does. See if I can, because the carburetor I had to tune either one for drag racing or mileage. I'm going to see if I can get the best of both worlds the way it is, because it feels pretty good. I haven't done a dragging
Well, that's
yet
what
on it.
EFI is supposed to be good about.
Yeah.
Is that there is no split difference.
Yes, and that's what I'm
grays
hoping
the
to
lines, yeah.
And I have a draggy, and I got the brand new draggy. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be any different, but I do have time slips. So, hopefully I can get a decent. I'm going to do draggy on it and see if I can, as it learns, if it's getting better. That's actually what I'm doing right now. Is I've got the draggy out. I've done, this time. I've done another time. I'm going to do another time on it and just see if it's getting better as it goes along.
Huh.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well,
Super chat.
Yeah, Michael Schmidt sent us a super chat for our Batcave fund.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Michael. Man, you could have thrown a question in there. Because you got Batman right here and Robin. You could have asked him a Bat-related question.
Oh, you know what? I actually got one more thing to tell you. I was talking about, remember I'm going to put up the money for taking out Joe? I'm actually going to go even one better. I'm going to put that money up no matter what. And what that is that if Joe wins the event, he gets them. He collects.
I actually, when I first started doing the AHRA, I had a bounty program.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I'll tell you how I ended up doing that one. Let's just say you had somebody that won 2 weekends in a row. Okay, they'd automatically get a bounty put on them, and it was like, say, $200 to take that guy out, right? But every round that he went, his number went up, not for the payout, but for him, what he collected. Oh. If he won that day, let's say, and he went 5 rounds, he collected $500.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool. The problem was it never materialized because this whole thing runs on money, and when you get that fake pandemic in there, that really hurt everything.
Yeah. Well, how about this? I'm gonna do this a little different. Instead of 150, I'm gonna make it a 160 because that's 20s. That's easy, right? But for Joe, how about this, Joe? Is Mopar Joe in here today? If he's not, someone tell him. If he wins, I'm gonna give him 200 smackers. How about that?
Man.
200 smackers.
To walk around with a bounty on your back? Man, I'll tell you what. Mopar Joe, if you're not making T-shirts right now with a target on your back, you should be, right?
Should.
I mean, and you gotta make a couple of them because you need to get one of them that says, "I took Pulido's or Professor P's money." Right?
Yeah, and just think about it. Everybody's only going to make 160 for taking you out. You win again, $200, buddy. How about that? That's awesome.
That is awesome. Man, we got to write all this down because I got to remember it all.
Oh, I got to remember.
Okay.
I'll send you a text or something.
Let's see. Hookline of Fishing says, Shane, I have a good friend with a factory of a super stock Hemi car with the magnesium intake. I think it is one of 6.
Yeah.
It is so awesome. It's such an awesome piece of machinery.
Yeah. They were so built, so bitchin' back then. Just.
What did I tell you that my first thing in San Diego, when I first got to San Diego and I was going to school out there, they teach you how to do your job before you're actually expected to go do it in the Navy, believe it or not.
Wow.
And it was literally like my first Liberty weekend, what they call it. And so they used to have the car swap meet and show. And it wasn't at the Jack Murphy at this one. It was before the Jack Murphy. It was like a college.
Oh,
like Mira Mesa College, maybe?
Yeah, Mira Mesa College. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I went to that thing, and I got a ride in a real deal Cobra, right?
Oh.
Like a 427 4-speed Cobra.
I've never been in a real one. I've only been in mock ones, but that's awesome.
The guy he had parked there. He had brought the car to the car show, and he went to start it, wouldn't start. And I looked at him and I said, well, I'm kind of like a FE Ford guy myself. I said, I'll give you a push start if you give me a ride around the parking lot. And he's like, oh, is that all it'll take? And I said, yeah. And so I pushed the car, and it didn't take much to push it. The problem was when you put it in second gear, it let out the clutch on that big 427, and it pretty much came to a complete stop because the car doesn't have any weight.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to keep pushing it. And I was wore out. Oh, my God, man, was I wore out. And the guy's like, man, you earned that ride. And I got it started, but we rode around the parking lot, and God, that little sucker's like a freaking go-kart with a jet turbine on it, right? I mean, it's like that's kind of the equivalent of it.
Yeah, no, they're incredible. I was in a kit car one. I think it was a factory 5. It was a factory 5 one, right? So it was a pretty decent one. But man, that thing cornered like a go-kart. Like, you're absolutely right. And it only had like a 347 in it. It was like but man, 500 horsepower and something that weighs what,
Right.
2,200 pounds.
Oh, and speaking of that, Ryan from Streetcar Chronicles put up a post the other day of a guy that was selling a car. It's out in L.A. I've been looking for one of these for 3 years. Man, I swear to God, I need to win the lottery, and I'll make Buick World cool. There's a car that came up for sale, and you probably have never heard of one. It's called Apollo GT 5000.
No.
And Apollo GT 5000 was an American-made road race car, right? It was built in the United States. It's aluminum body from England, hammered out, like they did for the Cobra. Same kind of thing, except for... and everyone's seen one. You just didn't know what you were looking at. If you watch the movie The Love Bug, the black car that the bad guy drives in there is an Apollo GT 5000.
Huh.
And it's powered by a 215 or 300 Buick with a 4-speed. But at that time, the Apollo GT 5000 the company was going under. It was just so hard for them to make cars and sales, and they didn't have, when you're talking hand-built road race cars, you don't have a storefront, right? I mean, the only reason that Shelby didn't go under is because Ford stepped in and pretty much bolstered him up for the racing program. But if you're looking at all the other cars that were made in the United States, your Apollo GT 5000, those guys went under after about 4 years. But the Apollo GT 5000, out of all the American-made road race cars, had the fastest top speed.
Wow.
Hands down.
I'm rooting for you.
Well,
if I win
just
the
came up for
lottery,
sale.
I'll buy it for you.
It's like $3,000, I think, for the body, and it's got the body and the chassis, but it's missing like the windows and stuff. And God, it would cost me an arm and a leg to just get it back on the road. But the neat thing is, I got the drivetrain, and
I'm gonna Google that thing. It's Apollo GT 5000, right?
yeah, and it's really freaking cool. It is 100% 60s. Jaguar XKE-ish, Cobra Mustang kind of.
Oh,
not Cobra Mustang.
yes, I have seen these. Okay, that thing's awesome looking.
Yeah.
Look at how long. That is that is the epitome of long nose right there.
Oh, yeah. It looks more like an XKE than anything, right?
Yes, I was going to say, yeah, it looks like a Jaguar XKE. Absolutely.
I'll Google it, and then I'll throw it up here in the John Wilburn window, the picture-in-picture, because everybody needs to see this.
Hey, while you're doing that, John Wilburn said that he's telling Joe now, and he has written it in the No Name Nationals book, Dallas. So it's already taken care of.
Oh,
So
sweet.
You won't have to remember anything. Thanks, John Wilburn. So remember, John Wilburn, this is what it is: $160 from Slant Daily Garage to take out Joe. If Joe wins, $200. That's what it is, and you guys heard it here.
So here's what your Apollo GT 5000 looks like. I don't know if I can.
Oh, you're going John Wilburn. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, and I mean, from the side, if you think about it, it looks very much a sports car from the era, right? I mean, like the Ferrari GTB would have been kind of similar to this. The XKE,
Dude,
Jaguar.
it looks so Jaguar. Dude, honestly, the first time when I did this, I was like, is that a Jaguar? Because there's a green one that came up.
Oh man, the story is crazy.
Yeah, it looks just like a Jaguar.
The story is crazy. You got to read the story. It's about like two guys that set out to build this, and one of them was a master fabricator, and then the other guy was a dude that just literally had this vision of building a sports car.
Frank Resner and someone else. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool story, man.
Oh, I'll read it. Yeah, here, I'm looking at it right here. Okay, I'll read it after this.
Yes.
Looks good.
Okay, Rick Salmon, that's right. On the Love Bug, it is called the Thorndike Special. That is the car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it sounds so damn cool. So there was a lot of them actually like that. Hook, Line, and Fishing saying I had a Jensen Interceptor with a 440 4-speed back in the early 90s. Missed that car. That's a lot of those cars don't get any real recognition. And they were pretty neat. Your Jensen, your Sunbeam Tigers, your...
That's what it was, Sunbeam Tiger. That was the one that had the Chrysler engine in it. That's
some of them had a small block Ford, I thought.
Oh, yeah, what was it? Was it Sunbeam? Which one had the?
But there's, he had your later ones, your Bricklands. I mean, you never hear about these things anymore.
Which one of these had a big? One of them had a 440, and it was ridiculous. It's a tiny little car. Man, it's definitely.
Well, that's probably the one he's talking about, the Jensen Interceptor.
Could be.
What's on the 2B says, Professor P, I was away for a few weeks. Not sure if you saw the Slant 6 load spreader question. Are they available?
Yes, they are. I just got 20 of them in stock right now. Let me look at my thing. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 10 sold that I got to get to. So yes, yes, they're available and they come unpainted. The unfortunate thing about those right now is shipping, because it is a one piece. So shipping that thing is rather expensive, and I apologize, but right now just shipping rates suck. It's literally the same price as the damn piece. I only sell them for $40. Sometimes the shipping is about the same price because it's such a bulky box.
What you need to do is go down to the post office, and you need to look at all the sizes, right?
I've done it.
Have you really? There's no way to do anything with it?
I went to different box sites because it's such an odd size. You
know?
Oh,
yeah, and it's big and long.
It's long. It's the size of a Slant 6, and that's the thing is I made it one piece on purpose so that way it never leaks. But man, does it... Just getting it in a box and shipping it sucks,
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I've actually come up with ideas. So Big Billy Racing says, that's a sweet ride. Ever seen the Concept AMX3 rear engine with a 390 AMC 6 were built? I have seen that car, and I'm surprised they never made it, because that probably would have sold pretty good. I mean, that would have rivaled the Corvette, and it probably would have whipped its ass, to be honest with you, because it's a rear engine car. John Wilburn says that Joe is excited by the bounty. He's pretty much saying, bring it. He's got to get the shirt made with a target on his back.
Yeah.
Right?
But did you tell him, John, that I'm going to give him $200 if he wins the damn thing again? Then that's a 2-time winner. And then if he wins it the following year, if he wins it, that's $300. I'll give him $100 each time he wins it in a row. How about that?
So here's a lot of cool answers here, right? So what Zonda 2B says 260 was a small block Ford, and then Doug Narden said it was 289, and Loutburn says that my neighbor had a Sunbeam Tiger. It was a small block Ford.
Yeah, it was.
But Danny Boyd here says this was supposed to get the Chrysler small block, but it wouldn't fit, so they went with a Ford 260 and 289.
Yeah, that's exactly. I remember this. There was a story on it, but there is a one of those European style cars that came with a 440, and I for whatever reason I just can't remember. But that's the reason why I always think Sunbeam and small block is because Chrysler's because they were going to try to put it in there, but it just wouldn't fit.
Dust Devil Garage is saying, I had a Bradley GT kit car. I would love to get another one, and that's the one I think isn't the Bradley the one like the Hardcastle McCormick car, the Coyote.
Oh, right? The Coyote.
Yeah. Is that the Bradley GT?
I think so. Yeah, I'm gonna Google it real quick.
now we're doing picture-in-picture Googling. The one I'm gonna look up that Jensen Interceptor, because I think that Jensen Interceptor is the car you're thinking of, Shane.
Could be. It could be because I just. Oh yeah, the Bradley GT. It's like it's the size of like a Volkswagen. I bet you this is a Volkswagen underneath here.
Dude, what is it? This car? Where's that at?
I don't know. Does it got a 440 in it?
I don't know if those came with a 440 for sure.
No,
I think they were.
I'm gonna do some research.
383.
No, so it was a
and 440.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
And it came with a 4-speed manual or a 727 torque plate.
Yeah, that's the car.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, what Zonda 2B is saying that Monteverde was also one that had a Chrysler big block in it.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's the one. There's one that looks like like those same style of bodies that we were just talking about. Let's stay here. Monteverde car. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, that one looks more Jaguar XJ. Yeah, that's but it's a little bigger. But yeah, I think that's the one I was thinking.
Is that the Monteverde?
Yeah, the Monteverde. He's right. That's the one. That's why I can never remember the damn name.
because it's some weird name.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, like, that's one name that I would never remember, to be honest with you.
and you know, honestly, if you didn't say the name, I would have looked at that and I would have been, okay, yeah, that's the name of it, but I can't say it.
Oh man!
Here's let me get a picture of it here. Let's go John Wilburn here.
Michael Schmidt. That's what we should do is we should get a Jensen Interceptor put on a shirt, and then it says this at the end of it: the fattest ass rear window. Right?
Here, see it? That's it.
Oh,
right
that
there.
is a cool car.
Yeah,
That's the Monteverde.
That's a Monteverde right there. 69
That
Monteverde.
looks like a freaking like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari of the time.
Dude, it's badass looking, man. And that's a side shot. If you look at it from like a quarter shot.
You know, Doug Narden's saying this thing was available with the 6-pack option.
That's exactly right. That's see, check it out, man. Look at how badass
That's
that
pretty
thing looks.
badass.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. They had all kinds of like really hot rod type of things in it. Like it had all the hot rod shit in it thing. So that's why I dug it.
Oh, so that Bradley GT is that kit car that uses the Volkswagen Pan.
Yeah.
Right? There was a lot of those. There was a lot of sports and Italian supercars that came out like in the late 70s, early 80s that were essentially what they called the kit car fad. It took place of really where all that started was the Myers-Manx, right? The Myers-Manx dune buggy came out, and it was essentially replaced the body on your wrecked and or rusted out Volkswagen.
And cut 10 inches out of it. You got to cut 10 inches out of it.
And shorten it, yeah.
Yep.
But then you had something that nobody else had. Well, that fad took off, and you had like the Bradley, and there was a gajillion of them. A lot of them had the Gullwing style doors, right? But if you look around, you can find one of those. They're not very common, and they're not very well put together. They didn't last the test of time. usually the sun would do them in, and they just fall apart.
Take them apart, yeah.
Yeah, but
I built a Myers-Manx for one person. There was a place in El Cajon called Fibertech, and they came out with a.
here you go.
What's that?
He said, Michael Schmidt says, I found the ad on Craigslist in Antelope Valley, California, described as a Ferrari Apollo GT 5000 for $25K. and it's just rare. It's not even it's not by Ferrari, but it's just a rare car, and that's where I don't know if it's worth that kind of money. I'm not sure. I never even looked these things up.
Especially if the guy's calling it a Ferrari. He doesn't even know what he has. How can he ask $25,000 for it?
I don't know. And you know he's not going to come down on it when you throw numbers like that on there.
Yeah. But there was a company in California called Fibertech, and they made a Myers-Manx that was longer, so you didn't have to cut the pan for it. So yeah, it was good. So and it was a true 4-seater, and so I built a couple of those for people out there in California. That was pretty cool.
Well, I love that thing because did you ever watch Top Gear?
Oh yeah.
You know when those guys left and they went over to Amazon and it became I don't know, whatever, the Great Race or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They had an episode on there where they all built Myers-Manx dune buggies, and they drove them in Africa, up the west coast of Africa to like civilization through desert, right?
Yeah.
Well, of course, you get your normal. I can't remember the three guys' names. You get Clarkson, Hammond, and what's the other guy's name? Captain Slow. Okay, so Captain Slow shows up in this original 1960s looking dune buggy. Yeah. And then you got what's his name? Hammond shows up in this kind of hot rodded dune buggy. And Clarkson shows up with one with a 215 Buick hanging out of the back of it, right? Mm-hmm. And it was overheating like every 20 minutes. But he was beating the crap out of it.
Yeah.
It just looks like so much fun. I don't know if it would cost a lot to make one of those. I don't think so. The hardest thing these days would be probably trying to find a pan that it would fit on that was in decent shape.
Yeah, because it would be rusted out. You got to get one out of California.
Well, so maybe if Jay Leno gets that car, because he's saying that if I don't get it, Jay Leno will. I'm sure he would. And maybe I need to probably send the ad to him. That might be the best thing to do is go to Jay Leno's garage and just send the ad to him.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, you buy it. We'll drive it down for you.
I'll tell you what, if he gets it, I'll bring him a 300 Buick to put in it. I'll bring it to him.
We'll build it and bring it to him. How about that?
Yeah, that'd be badass.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. When I was looking at some of these cars, there's always a picture of Jay Leno in one of them, like the Brooklyn, GT. There's a picture of him in one of those.
Dude, I wish, if I had that kind of money, I would be doing the same thing.
Oh,
Same
yeah.
exact thing.
Why not? Yeah.
I'd be such a mess, except for I'd be the competing entity against any drag car that's in Don Garlett's museum, because I would have it in my house.
Yeah.
I would. I really would probably be the biggest.
Honestly, if I got that kind of money, you and I both would we would build 990 cars, real door slammer 990 cars, and we would tour the circuit just raising havoc in the 990 class.
Oh, you mean like make them poop their pants like I did with the T-Bird?
And we would just do it every single race we're going, and we're gonna be just hitting it out of the hole, full throttle, wheels up, and pulling gears. I mean, real.
I think
deal
what
stuff.
would be really awesome is, how they do throttle stop. What if you did the opposite of that, right? Where you spray it off the line, right? And just all you do is you don't even care what the number is. You literally sandbag the guy and spray it up next to him the whole time just to nip him. They wouldn't know how to deal with you.
Well, how cool would that be? You pull up to the line, and before you do your burnout, you start purging nitrous.
I was like, what is this guy doing? This is a 990 class. I think it'd be cool. You show up with like a 4-speed and just a bunch of nitrous and just clip them in the lights. Yeah,
just go for it. Yeah, dude. I would honestly, if I won the lottery and it was like crazy, I would totally do that, and I would run the circuit for a few years just to
just
mess
make them
with them.
mad. Yeah, till they quit. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
And I would actually bring a crew of people. It would be me and probably 3 other people, and we would just go in there and wreak havoc, bring it back to what it used to be.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. Maybe that's what I should do. Is instead of messing around with all the other crap, just bring back the Pro Gas class, the 950 Pro Gas, no electronics, no BS, no throttle stops, just 950 index, however you can run it.
Yeah.
Bike, car, nitrous, Honda, whatever, right?
Exhibition class 990 or 950. That would just be awesome.
Oh, man, now I'm all excited.
Me too. I'm telling you, I want to win the lottery now. I want to go kill some people in the 990 class, man. That would be fun.
Jonathan Couchy says that if he won the lottery, first an all-out build on an International 392, next an all-out turbo build on a 6'4" truck. 6'4" Hemi.
Yeah.
And then after that, a 700 cube all-motor Hemi drag week setup in a travel all.
Yeah.
I thought about actually doing a. You know how the big thing is to drag and drives now?
Oh, yeah, I love that stuff.
I thought about doing something really small, drag and drive, where you got virtually like 2-3 tracks involved, right? But you can't change tires. There's no trailers, right?
Yeah, nothing.
None of that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no, I've thought about that too. Like, just you have to do drag radials.
I actually thought about just doing Tiger Paw Challenge, and you do it like that. And it's Tiger Paw tire only, like a uniroller Tiger Paw.
You get them mounted at the track, and that's what it is.
That's it. Bring your wheels, and we'll stick them on there.
Sounds like the 165 class.
It would be. I think it would be kind of cool, but it'd be a drag and drive, right?
Yeah, that would be awesome, man. If you limit the traction rule, that just evens the playing field right there.
right. Yeah,
I mean, that just it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it would go well though.
It would, because it would bring out. It wouldn't make any difference then. You could have $1 million in something that's only going to get X amount of traction. You could have some guys got an LS
$400 car, $400 car win the whole damn thing.
Yeah, exactly. And like when I raced that in the Volkswagen, the 165 class, I didn't have anything special. I literally had a 67 Volkswagen, and at that time I think I had a 2275 in it, and it was everybody else had turbos and nitrous and all this stuff. I was up and gone because my car would hook because I didn't have a ton of torque. So I would carry the front end on that thing first and second gear, and they would have to try to run me down because they would be all spinning off the line.
Right.
And then they would try to pull the power in, and there was a couple things. You couldn't have any wings on it. Like you couldn't have a spoiler in the back.
Right.
Couldn't have any splitter, and you had to have stock bumpers. You couldn't have blades on them. You had to have the stock bumpers. So they look like real street cars. And so people who have like turbos, a Volkswagen loses like 50 pounds of weight over 80 miles an hour because it's literally a wing. I mean, it's, flat on the bottom and a wing on top, right? So it creates lift. So they would be trying, as soon as they hit fourth gear, they'd be at full boost. And I would look in my mirror and I would watch them. They're just smoking the tires because they're just putting more than they could handle. I'm clear out there. It was a good class, man. It was a fun
I'm just
class.
kind of wondering how you would do that. Like, maybe you'd have to get like Uniroyal to sponsor the thing, right? And you just do Uniroyal Tiger Paws at the track. There's mounting and balancing there, and then you mark them to where you can't take them off, you can't flip them around, you can't do anything weird to them.
Yeah, they're on there. That's it. Green dot, red dot, just like on the Navy. You know what I mean? Put a dot on one side. That's the way it stays there. You can't shit.
No, that makes sense. I think it. I just don't know. God, it would probably cost them an arm and a leg just to do that. But
Price
that would
of
be
entry.
fun, though.
Price of entry would have to include the tires. Part of that. So whatever the tires cost.
Lot Burns says. I missed the wrong one. Okay, Watzonda 2B. Does the Buick 300 have 300 cast in the Valley area? I found a long block at my local yard a while ago and thought it was a good-looking engine. I don't think it has 300 cast in the Valley area. I don't think it has 300 cast on it at all. There is a stamp on the block I think it's on the passenger side on those early ones. And it'll be 2 letters. And those 2 letters correlate to what the engine is. And the way that I can tell the 300, 215 and 300 is easy because the 215 is aluminum. The 300 is cast iron. But the way I can tell a 300 apart from a 340 or a 350 Buick is the 340 and 350 Buick on the China rail at the top where the intake manifold bolts on. There is a dowel pin that centers that intake manifold. On the 300, there is not. That's an easy way to look at it and tell the difference up front. Let's see.
Man,
it's already doing it over 2 hours.
I was just gonna say we've already. I just happened to look at the clock. It's 2 hours, man.
We got to get out of here. And I do appreciate these lives. I really, Sheen and I have fun with them with you guys on here because you always ask fun and interesting stuff. And if it gets boring for you, hey, throw something in there. We'll liven it up.
Yeah.
We try to have some fun with this. And if you got a question or two, but don't be afraid to throw them up there. Nobody gets beat up over whatever question they have.
Yeah.
We more or less just have fun with this thing.
Everybody's at a different place in their automotive, life and their journey. So you can throw anything up there, and we're not going to make fun of you, man. Because there was a point where I was reading a manual on how to change a piston in a KX125. So everyone's starts somewhere. That's the way I look at it. So we're all here to help everybody.
Well, I guess the next thing to throw out there is, since we're wrapping it up, John and I will be live Friday at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern. So it's 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. I do have to talk to John because I have to leave a little early for that one. I didn't, because my wife had to leave for this funeral, and now I got to pick her up on Friday. So I'll do the best I can. For the people that did buy AHRA merch last week, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And for the guys that did the super chat, thank you so much for donating.
Yes. Like John said, it literally keeps the light on.
Yes, it does.
I pulled the John Wilburn. That's a twofer, John. John Wilburn. John Wilburn, are you still there? That's a twofer. He knows the joke.
So Friday, John normally does lives. This weekend, Friday, or this coming Friday, it'll be John and I talking about the updates for the No Name Nationals. And man, there's a lot of No Name 500 entry guys this year. There's a lot. So I don't know if it's going to be more than last year, but it's still quite a few.
John, I just want my number last year, and it's not a pun, but I want my number 69 like I had last time. So that's all I ask, because I want to keep that number. I still have it in my trunk. And I drove a 69 Dart up there. I was like, man, that's awesome. So it's in there. So I just want my 69 number, man. That's it. That's all I ask.
All right. Well, yeah, we will. We're gonna wrap it up. And Michael Schmidt says, "Great
Same bat
live,
time, same bat channel."
Exactly. That's what they used to say the next week. But we'll have a new duo picture up there. I'll have something up there that hopefully everybody recognizes. So if I can get Sox and Martin crop their faces out and put mine and Shane in there, I'll do it. But until next Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll see you.
You guys take it easy, man. Thanks for coming out.